I'll officially welcome you, Ranveer, on my chat show. It's called Coffee Time with Griha, and I cheers you with my cup of coffee. I know
Cheers.
summers hai, lekin bhai coffee to banti hai.
Always, always. I hope
So Ranveer,
my
yeah.
my choice of attire is okay for your show.
No, not completely. Summers, it's totally going. And the fact that you actually asked me that, that's really very, very charming of you and very sweet. Because you are very passionate about talking about mental health. So obviously, with Sushant Singh Rajput passing, and so many people drawing a lot of conjectures around his going away so suddenly, one conversation that has started is about mental health, and it's very, very important that we continue to keep it going, because we do not need another high profile saddening incident like this one for this conversation to actually begin again. There should not be a stopping to this. So first of all, about that, we are all in the lockdown. It's very important to actually be mentally very sound and take care of that space, that headspace.
Yeah, 100%. I just feel that coronavirus, the whole situation with the lockdown, it's bringing out whatever's inside everyone, be it your nature or be it all your issues that come to the surface. And that's why it's actually a very, very, very crucial time for all kinds of influencers. And I'm not just talking about YouTubers or Instagrammers, I'm talking about anyone who has any kind of reach to put out the idea of positivity and to put out the idea of sharing any kind of mental health issue that you're going through. I'm not saying that we should talk so openly about mental health, because that is not everyone's cup of tea. I do believe that you need to, have some kind of a psychology degree, or you need to have studied the subject to talk about mental health openly. But you should be talking about the concept of sharing your mental health issues openly. That's what influencers should come out with. They should be able to share what's happening inside their own minds, because a lot of young kids are going to look up to all kinds of influencers, be it cricketers, actors, politicians, journalists.
Yes.
Anyone with a following should share some kind of personal stories that will give people strength. Because what's happening now is that with whatever happened, it's kind of like a national level issue. So a lot of young kids who are going through their own mental health issues. Yes, people are talking about mental health now, but also their own internal mental health issues are coming to the surface. This week, more than any other week, is very crucial for people to come out with their stories. That's what I think.
Right. So what has been your own personal journey when you started off, way back? It's been more than just a couple of years for you. You have broken out on the scene. I believe it's been 5 years or more. So when you decided to do something which is on the inspirational space, you were also going through a low phase in your life when you decided to, break out of that mind space and decide to actually do something for yourself, and hence also to inspire other people. And that actually, in your own demographic and in your own space where people started following you, you got the kind of responses that, helped you go ahead with this sort of journey, and you are here and you're actually talking about it now. So what was it like for you? And now that you are in this particular space, how do you actually talk to people? I'm sure you'd be having a lot of people who will be reaching out to you about their own stories, how they're facing a lot of issues, not just during the lockdown, but otherwise. How do you deal with those things?
Honestly, when we began Beer Biceps, when my friend Nikunj Lotia began BUNIC, when my friend Prajakta Kohli began Mostly Sane, all of us faced similar kind of obstacles, which was mainly society telling us what we're doing is wrong. We were taking up an unconventional career. Those were the major kind of mental health setbacks that you'll see all YouTubers speaking about. That when it was starting out, it was just very difficult. Some people do deal with this whole concept of trolling, like online hate. That's something that affects a lot of YouTubers and influencers' mental health. So everyone's stories are different, but primarily there's one concept that I believe in, that I know Prajakta and Nikunj believe in as well, which is try being the version of yourself that you required to be around when you were younger. For example, when you were younger, if you needed someone to tell you certain things, at this stage of your life, you should be that person who's saying certain things to give it out to people younger than you, who are facing a similar kind of trauma that you were facing back then. That's all I've tried doing. And the way I personally look at like traumas or difficulties that life throws at you is that you're going through it so that you can become a kind of source of inspiration or a beacon of knowledge. I know it sounds very vain and all that, but that's what it is, I feel. That if you're going through something, you're going through it in order to tell your story and share your learnings with other people. So that's genuinely what I feel. At this stage of my life, literally anything I'm going through, I'm trying to just encapsulate it in videos, in articles, and putting it out for the public. I think that's the biggest job of an influencer.
When you say that you had detractors when you wanted to get into a profession which was a road less taken, not many people did that back then also. And the fact that you guys are old timers, and I'd call you old timers because you've been in the scene for so long, there are so many new people who are breaking out onto that scene. The influencer term is used very, very vaguely, but it comes with a lot of responsibility, like you yourself have been talking about. Do you think that responsibility is lacking in the new crop that is coming in onto that scene?
That's the general assumption where we're talking about TikTokers primarily, and a lot of people point fingers at them saying, oh, you guys don't create meaningful content and the likes. I genuinely believe that the whole social media ecosystem, which is YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of it matures together. Social media has been in this country only for 5 years or so it's pretty early stage right now as well. If you actually scan American or European influencers, they are talking a lot more about mental health. They're talking about extremely personal things. They're talking about more serious, mature topics. I do think that Indians are also going to start talking about these kind of things going forward, especially after incidents like what's been happening lately. So, I genuinely think that we're going into like better times. And a job of the senior influencers or the senior YouTubers is to talk about these things. Like my friend Ashish Chanchlani, yesterday he spoke about online trolling in a big IGTV video. So I feel it's the job of a senior influencer to again set examples for the junior influencers.
And having said that, a lot of people are also, like you mentioned in my first question, a lot of people, and very important a week that this is, that everybody should come out with their own personal stories on their low phases of their lives, which a lot of people, influencers like yourself, have been doing. It has happened since yesterday. A lot of people are talking about, you should pick up the phone, talk to people, baat karo. There have been people who have, let's say, stand-up comics, because content creation, if you're a video creator, you're still being able to do that from the confines of your home. But what do stand-up comics do? They will not have a live audience. Even if they're doing things virtually, they'll not get that kind of response that is required from a live audience. That really hits up, someone's mental space, because they are not really getting that kind of encouragement which they are so used to. So what happens to these people? Have you been, I'm sure, talking to a lot of these people? A lot of these people have come on Ranveer's show also and spoken about how they started out and their own, journey and their own sort of mental space. Then what were they thinking when they were taking this road less taken? What happens now, especially in lockdown, when these many stories are actually coming out, where more and more people are talking about how traumatized do they feel about the fact that this is the new normal?
I genuinely hope and pray that this is not the new normal, and in 3 months things, get back to normal. Like all of us are hoping for the same. The way content creation, the nature of it is that it's a very ruthless kind of world where you are judged by your last piece of content. You are judged by your last video creation piece. If something isn't up to the mark, you will have online trolls tell you that it's not up to the mark. The truth about this world, and there's no two ways about it, is that it's extremely intense. So if you are putting a foot inside this content creation world, you can do whatever kind of content. It could be news, it could be stand-up comedy, it could be anything. It is going to be ruthless. So you need to accept that. That's what I genuinely feel. As much as I want to be there saying that no, manage or whatever, or give a word of support, this career is not for everyone, genuinely. That's what people don't see enough. That's what people don't talk about. It's an extremely intense career. I've seen a lot of talented people come up, but they can't deal with the consistency aspect of it, and they can't deal with the online trolling. So it is a dark career, and you have to be tough to deal with it. That's what I also feel, which is why it's also important to talk about mental fitness along with the concept of mental health. Mental fitness is a concept spoken about by Tony Robbins. I speak about it a lot on YouTube as well. It's the ability to strengthen your mind and your mindset to the extent where, suppose life throws a difficult situation at you, you're mentally more equipped to deal with it. Now, when we're talking about mental health, there's clinical mental health issues which are to do with your hormonal system, which are to do with something going wrong with the biology of your body. But for the vast majority of us, like, I'm just quoting a figure off the top of my head, but this is from what I've figured from my own audiences. For at least 70 to 80% of most of us, it's about a lack of mental fitness. And
Right.
mental fitness is primarily created by the content you consume, by your daily habits, in large part due to your physical fitness also. Fitness definitely plays
Okay.
a role in what you think, because just the process of exercise releases a lot of what we call feel good hormones, endorphins, dopamine in your bloodstream, which physiologically change the way you perceive the world and the way you think. So while we're talking about mental health, it is extremely crucial to talk about mental fitness as well. And that's why a big aspect of what we talk about is the process of meditation. The whole
Okay.
world is adopting it. Top CEOs all over the world are adopting it. Top entrepreneurs keep talking about how it's a very big weapon in their life. And meditation is something we should speak about more. While it's important to address mental health issues, while it's important to talk about how important it is to share it, to talk about it openly, it's also important to talk about solutions. And the whole world is kind of latching on to the concepts of mental fitness and meditation. And that's what I believe is the future, and that's the direction we're heading in.
Okay. You have a digital entertainment company, Monkey. You have employees under you. Everybody is working from home right now. I have my friends who work for really big brands, and they are feeling that stress because working from home, even though it should have been, it's your space and it should have been more relaxing, sadly, it is not. Because you are either swamped with too much of work that an employee is always very, very anxious. Now, you as a company, you believe in having a very, very healthy environment and you actually practice what you preach. How do you think that this sort of thing changes? Because everywhere, and whoever I'm speaking to, it could be any friend of mine, they are constantly exhausted. They're constantly working because there is no 9 to 5. There is no set timing. Your boss gives you a work and you'd have to do it. There is no, sort of a deadline. You'd be having to do it 10 minute mein kar lo, ya whatever. Anything can make you anxious. So that is happening. Do you think that from the top management down, it needs to have a trickle down sort of an effect so that things change, at a larger level?
Okay, I want to talk about someone called Gaur Gopal Das. He was a guest we had on the podcast recently, someone who's been a practicing monk for more than 20 years.
Yes.
And I'd asked him about some of his most important lessons that he learned as a monk. He said that even in the life of a monk, there are difficulties. But what they teach you, one of the greatest lessons of monkhood, which is supposed to be the epitome of human peace and human mindset, they tell them that despite the difficulties, you must have a stronger sense of duty and you must have a stronger sense of doing something larger than yourself. So, irrespective of the successes or the lows, you must come back to that sense of duty. And that's actually the core aspect of mental fitness as well. Now, I will tell you this. I genuinely think that the journey of entrepreneurship is extremely difficult, and the leadership core of any organization sets a tone for the rest of the organization. So, very often, my co-founders and myself, we also deal with our own mental health. Very often, we feel the pressure of leadership. We feel the pressure of paying so many salaries, all that. We confide in each other and we confide in our loved ones. That's another thing I want to highlight a lot. You must learn to talk openly with your family or at least a set of close friends. You have no idea what kind of mental load you can just like give off to someone. Like if there's 100 kilo load, it's always easier to pick it up with people. So if you have 5 or 6 close people to you, ensure that you share that 100 kilo load with them, because then you only have to lift 20 kgs. It's very difficult to understand and grasp this concept until you actually experience it.
And that's so simply you put it actually, and it's actually easy. I mean, the way you put it and the way you say it, it's very easily put. But yeah, it takes a lot out of an individual to confide in the other. That's also one thing.
Yeah. Guys especially should learn how to cry. Like, it's something that the world of meditation taught me. I remember I was a power lifter when I'd begun meditating, and I used to have a very macho kind of self-image. I used to hold back tears a lot, even in very intense situations. But when I got into deeper meditations, I'd find myself crying a lot in those meditations where I couldn't even control it. And I was so locked in on going into a deeper state of meditation that the tears were a part of diving that deep. So I'd always noticed that right after the meditation sessions, I'd feel much lighter. And I knew it was because I'd cried out a lot of the grief. So just crying as a concept for guys is also something that should be spoken about a lot more. I've not cried to my co-founders, but say if I have someone special in my life, like a romantic interest, I think a lot of the strength of those kind of relationships is built on exposing your vulnerability, especially as a man. Or
Yes.
your mom. You're allowed to be completely vulnerable in front of your mom. Like that's a very basic human concept. So I genuinely feel like we should encourage men to cry and not kind of look down on. I remember as a 4-year-old in junior KG, I was crying once because my mom couldn't come for our annual day or something. And I was so embarrassed, and I was a guy who was crying. And I was crying, I was weeping, tears all over my face. And some kids came up to me and said, "Hey, what? You're a girl or what?" Like, like they said shit. And I said, "I'm not crying, something went in my eye." So in
Okay.
society, even a 4-year-old thinks like that. A 4-year-old
Yeah.
guy thinks like that. That's the actual conversation we need to be having. When I do feel that 90s kids were born after the year 1989, when we have children, if we have a son, we should encourage the son to openly cry. So I do think that a lot of things that went wrong with our generation are going to be corrected going forward.
Do you think that conditioning is changing? Where that branding, we had an advertisement that boys don't cry. That
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
is changing. Do you
Yeah,
think that's changing?
100%. 100%. I thank all the women of the world for that. I think when a girl tells us that we can't cry, somewhere it matters. I mean, it does kind of set off a certain signal in your head. Yeah.
When you wanted to do this, okay, and the fact that you decided to do, which is sort of on the lines of being an inspirational, motivational sort of a speaker, and you're doing it in your innovative way. Did you ever once think that लोग seriously लेंगे मुझे, मैं engineering से आके निकला हुआ हूँ, बच्चा हूँ, will people listen to me? The fact that you actually took a degree, you're a certified, wellness expert and nutritionist also. The fact that you did all of that, do you think it helped? How long did it take for people to take, because of your age, take you seriously?
I think people start taking me seriously now, 5 years into the process. But I have no complaints. Like, if you're a young cricketer, you're not going to be able to win over fans until you've played for 5, 6 years and you've consistently proven yourself. As with any career, if you're a surgeon, you'll have to perform a number of surgeries for people to respect you to some degree or to trust you with their own body or their own illnesses. It's fine. That's a part of the game. You have to kind of stay in the game long enough to prove yourself. No complaints there. While we talk about mental health, certain tough aspects of life like this also need to be spoken about. That this is going to be a harsh reality of the world. You got to work for what you want to earn in life. So that's fine.
Okay. Now, the reason why I started the interview like this, and I know people will be missing that Ranveer Allahbadia smile because that's become synonymous with you, is because I was also coming from a sort of a space where I happened to see this particular video. That do you think because of social media, on the one hand, there'd be a lot of compassion that you'd see, but there'd be a lot of hate that you'd see. Be it people or fans lashing out at an ex girlfriend or an ex love interest, or another actor coming out and using it as an opportunity to lash out at the industry at the cost of nepotism or whatever it is. There is a lot of hate on social media. How do you deal with that?
Gri, I lost you there for a minute. So this is the last part of what you said. I heard the rest of it.
So I just wanted to understand that because there is a lot of hate on social media, let's say if Sushant Singh passed away, then there is a section of his fans who go to his, ex-girlfriend's account and they start abusing her for something or the other. There is an actor who uses that as an opportunity to call out nepotism in the industry yet again, and how the people of the industry were responsible to, lead him to do what he did, to take his own life. So do you think that there is a lot of hate on social media than, things that would motivate people more? And that's the mental space that I was coming from, because I was taking care, or I was, reading a lot of things, watching a lot of things that are happening since yesterday. And most of it, I think 90% of it is hate and only 10% is compassion. Do you think that's really dreadful?
I do. Okay, so there's two things I want to say here. One, social media is a reflection of human society. So human society does have its black and whites. So you can't just say that, it's mostly hate. Secondly, I feel that there is a concept of negative biases on social media. Just as a reader, you don't even need to be an influencer. So a lot of influencers tend to focus on hate comments or trolling. Even if there are like 9 beautiful, loving, encouraging comments, you'll focus on the one that criticizes you. and that's not their fault. That's the way our minds are built, because we evolved from cavemen. And as cavemen, our natural instinct was, when we were sleeping, say, in a village, you'd always kind of look out for sources of danger. So the human mind over time has evolved into constantly looking at negative biases, a possible negative, negative outcome of a situation. So even when you're on social media as an influencer, you're reading your comment section, you'll tend to focus and remember the negative comment. For example, my mom and me did a podcast, beautiful comments. Maybe there were like some 3,000 comments, out of which 2,999 were positive, and there was maybe one negative comment. And my mom reminds me about it every day. But that's not her fault. She's just new to the world of social media. So on social media, it affects influencers the same. Even someone who's consuming social media, an average person will tend to remember, say, an actor calling him out for like the wrong reasons, or someone kind of dissing his memory. But there has been a lot of prayers and love from our country. Also, I definitely feel it's not 90% hate. It may be like 80% love and 20% hate, but that 20% seems much larger than life to us because of our negative biases. But in saying that, my question is to you, like Griya, so you've been a part of like journalism. What do you think about this whole situation? Because again, I'm talking as a motivational speaker, and I feel that
Yes.
this kind of question needs to be answered with a much more 360-degree perspective. So what do you think?
See, when I first heard about this, I got to know it and it was a shocker. Everywhere, people were actually shocked about it. And it was more of a shocker to me because only 4 days back, I was talking to my husband and I said, why don't I message Sushant and ask him to be a part of these conversations? I think it'd be more than willing to do it because he's a genuinely nice and warm person and I've got a good rapport with him. And after that, that was the one thing that actually came to my mind. But when I started seeing the news, once people were like, okay, this has happened, then we are also part of this reporters group and all. The one thing that really hit me were the pictures that were being floated. As a journalist, that's something that I was stunned and shocked, and I don't understand how can people do it for just a number of likes or whatever it is, traction, whatever the word is for it. I was shocked and I was angry, but there is nothing that you can do there. And after that had happened, there were only conjectures about, could this be a suicide? Could this be a murder? Things like that. I don't understand that instead of grieving the dead or probably thinking about his family and friends, you're already making conspiracy theories. And that's why I asked you, there's so much of negativity that people have actually, instead of just talking about the star that he was and how he has impacted lives, you're only concentrating on the way he passed, which is actually demeaning his memory. And being in this profession and having interviewed these people, this is what I feel connected to, and which I think that should be endorsed more rather than the hate, which I think was lacking. And I think the conversations and conjectures about why and how he died should be there till the fact that we are addressing these mental health issues, because that was the truth, that he was ailing, he was hurting, he was seeking treatment. But it is not as normalized in the society. The mental health awareness and the matters of mental health is not as normalized as, let's say, an ailment like cancer for that matter. Nobody takes it seriously. Not many people take it seriously. So it takes like a Deepika Padukone or a Shaheen Bhatt to come out and talk about depression to people, actually, give them a ear, because they are major influencers. So having said that, and then I also can talk about the duplicity of the industry. A lot of people who did not even think of reaching out to him are just doing it for the fact that they have to do it. I call it a herd mentality. They post one selfie with Sushant because that's the trending thing. Sadly, that's the word that's being used. That's what I do not understand, because if they really felt for him, they could have done something to help him out, even if he was, let's say, I hear things like he was bipolar or whatever. The fact that he was depressed, they should have understood it. And it takes a lot out of a person to actually go ahead and confide in the other person. And if he was not able to do it, probably the industry people who had worked with him, who had some sort of a rapport with him, could have done it before he decided to take his own life. So I'm in that sort of a mental space, and that's why it's very difficult to actually wrap your head around all this. And I also think that it's a very ruthless industry. It's very ruthless.
I have something to say. So while I completely understand what you're saying and I completely agree with you, in like everything you said. Like I completely agree that it's extremely wrong to send photos of a deceased person, or like just that herd mentality concept you spoke about. What I do strongly believe is, as an individual, even you're an influencer, you have your own clout. There are 1,300 people watching this. Every single person's registered what you have said now. And I feel as influencers in the present, if you're able to make a change, if you're able to put out a piece of content, if you're able to voice your opinion, you're at least influencing those 14, now there's 1,400 people. You're just telling those 1,400 people that idea and putting that seed of positivity in their mind, or that seed of, hey, this thing that was done wasn't correct. And that's honestly all we can do at this stage, because you can't go back into last week and fix this situation, but you can fix the future to prevent situations like this. I genuinely feel that while people say social media is making the world a more negative place, there are warriors on social media. There are its own Avengers, you included, just for speaking up, about this the way and putting out your perception out there. That's all you can do as an influencer. Cricketers can talk about it, actors can talk about it, talk about your own trauma, talk about your own stories. You don't know which teenager sitting in Bhopal or Kolkata is connecting to you. So just talk about it openly and talk about what you feel. If someone's used, like there was an influencer yesterday who posted a video of Aaj Tak saying that, guys, so and so happened, come to my profile and, in my stories, I've explained why the suicide happened. That's completely wrong. That's ethically wrong. That's wrong from a karmic perspective. You cannot take someone's death like that lightly. And honestly, I feel Indian audiences are very, very sharp. People caught on to this, and that influencer got his due in terms of a backlash. So, in 5 years, we're going to see a much more mature, much more woke version of the Indian youth on social media. I still believe we're going into a correct place.
How do you also see a lot of people from the industry reacting in their various ways? I spoke about the inspirational videos that have come out. I saw a video by Sikandar Khair. There was a video by Zishan Ayub where he's actually reaching out to the outsiders of the industry that, listen, you guys are not alone. Just talk. If you feel alone and if you think that you do not have work, just come and talk. Then there were like sort of A-lister actors who, I saw one post where, there's a private conversation sort of released, obviously well-meaning, because, this was the last conversation between him and Sushant. How do you see sort of these various aspects? I do not understand the commodification of somebody's death. That is something very serious, but do you think everything has become okay in the world of social media?
I think people have a great moral compass, honestly, on, at least this is my observation, people's moral compasses have become better over time. So when you're a social media influencer and when you spend as much time as I do studying this world, I feel like you get a bird's eye view of how the youth thinks, how society thinks in general. People's moral compasses are definitely becoming sharper. So while there were these bubbles of, wrongdoings that happened with the situation yesterday, like what we spoke about, that influencer thing you just spoke about, you're saying that it's become a commodity, like capitalizing on an incident like this. I still feel that the youth will learn from the situation, but the responsibility is in the YouTubers' hands. Is like Tanmay put up a beautiful video about mental health. Every single one of my YouTuber friends is creating content or has already created content, about the situation, about mental health, about mental fitness. And honestly, I feel that while the influencer career is extremely rewarding in terms of money, in terms of fame, these are those situations where you really need to get a sense of responsibility. And even if there are those negative bubbles, create enough positivity there that it can just like kind of, engulf all the negativity. And that is what's happening.